Let's dive into Ezekiel chapter 20, because here you get this incredible mix of a message that is both absolutely terrifying and somehow deeply hopeful. It's this stark prophecy about judgment by fire, but it all leads to this powerful promise of restoration. So this isn't about easy comfort, it's a look at the fierce, sovereign love of God. Let's break it all down.
Right out of the gate, the prophecy kicks off with this declaration in verse 33, and wow, talk about setting an intense tone. Forget any idea of a gentle shepherd here. This is God as an absolute, total sovereign. He's reasserting his authority with a mighty hand and fury poured out. He's making it crystal clear that his rule over a disobedient Israel is about to become forceful and completely undeniable.
So this leads us to the first big theme here, what the text calls a new wilderness judgment. You see, God's about to gather his scattered people, but this is no happy homecoming. Not yet. It's for a period of intense face-to-face testing and purification.
Now, in verses 34 and 35, God promises to gather Israel from all the countries where they've been scattered, but you have to pay attention to the language he uses, with a mighty hand and with fury poured out. See, this isn't some gentle invitation. It's a forceful divine intervention. He is coming for his people, period.
This is where it gets really fascinating. In verses 35 and 36, God draws this direct line back to the original Exodus. He says he's going to bring Israel into the wilderness of the people and judge them face to face, just like he did with their ancestors in the wilderness of Egypt. But here's the twist. This new wilderness isn't a physical, sandy desert. It's a spiritual trial happening right there among the nations, a direct confrontation between God and his people. And then in verse 37, God uses this incredible image. He says, "I will cause you to pass under the rod." Now, what on earth does that mean? Well, it comes straight from shepherding. A shepherd would have his flock pass single file under his staff, and he'd tap every 10th one, marking it as holy to the Lord. So God is saying, I'm about to do that with you. I am going to personally inspect and select those who are truly mine. And let me tell you, this selection process has some very serious consequences. Verse 38 is brutally clear. God will purge out from among you the rebels. They'll be gathered from the nations, yes, but they will never set foot in the land of Israel. This just makes one thing painfully obvious. Restoration isn't a blanket guarantee for everybody. It depends entirely on faithfulness.
So after laying out the terms of this purging, God presents Israel with this really stark, almost shocking choice. And it's this choice that leads directly to one of the greatest promises of restoration in the entire book.
This brings us to a really challenging part in verse 39. On the surface, it sounds like God is all of a sudden giving them permission to worship idols. The very thing that got them into this mess. So what is going on here?
Let's look at the full verse here. God says pretty much, go on, serve your idols if you refuse to listen to me. But then comes the critical part, the real command that follows. But pollute ye my holy name no more with your gifts and with your idols.
So no, this is not permission, not even close. This is pure divine sarcasm. It's a rhetorical challenge. God is calling out their hypocrisy. He's saying, look, if you're going to serve idols, then serve them. But do not dare bring that polluted worship into my house or attach it to my holy name. It's a command for integrity. Choose your master. You can't have it both ways. And right after this demand for purity, God pivots to the ultimate promise in verse 40. He declares that in the future, on his holy mountain, the entire purified house of Israel will serve him and only him. This is the vision of complete restoration, a united people in their promised land engaged in pure worship that God will finally accept. So why does God promise all this? Well, verse 44 gives us the ultimate reason. He says he will act for my name's sake. Not because Israel earned it or deserved it. They clearly didn't. This entire act of restoration is rooted in God's own faithfulness to his promises and his character, not in their merit. And what's really wild is that you can see this prophetic pattern of purging and then gathering play out across actual history. Think about it. The purge of the Babylonian destruction in 586 BC was followed by the gathering from exile under Cyrus. Then, millennia later, the horrific purge of the Holocaust was followed by the gathering of Jewish people in the establishment of the modern state of Israel. Time and time again, this pattern seems to hold true. Okay, in our final section, the prophecy shifts focus. It kind of zooms in, moving from the distant future to an immediate warning for Ezekiel's own time, and it's delivered as this powerful parable about an unstoppable fire. In verse 46,
God gives Ezekiel this new, chilling command. He says, "Set your face toward the south," which means toward Judah, and prophesy against the forest of the south field. It's this mysterious and deeply foreboding image. It just sounds ominous, right?
And then in verse 47, we get the prophecy itself. And it is absolutely terrifying. It's an image of a totally all-consuming fire. God says He will personally kindle it, and it's going to devour everything in its path, both the green living trees and the dry dead ones. Nothing is going to stop it.
So, let's decode this thing. The forest of the south, that represents the entire nation of Judah. The unstoppable fire, that's the invading Babylonian army. And the green tree and dry tree, well, that's just everybody. This means the coming judgment is going to be completely indiscriminate. It will consume the righteous and the wicked, the powerful and the common person alike. No one is getting spared.
And this wasn't just some symbolic story. This parable became a devastating reality in 586 BC. Nebuchadnezzar's forces were the fire. They did exactly what the fire was prophesied to do. They swept through Judah, they burned Jerusalem to the ground, and they destroyed the Holy Temple. The forest was completely consumed.
The chapter ends with this cry of pure frustration from the prophet himself. In verse 49, Ezekiel just turns to God and says, "Ah, Lord God, they say of me, doth he not speak parables?" Can you just feel his exasperation? He's delivering these literal warnings of life and death, and all the people here are riddles. They're just dismissing him.
And that leaves us with a final lingering thought. Ezekiel's audience, they just couldn't see the reality behind the symbol until the fire was literally at their door. And it forces us to ask ourselves, right? How do we distinguish a critical warning from just another story? When does a parable demand to be taken as literal impending reality?